Okay, before we say anything, just join me real quick in a whew. Okay. Now, welcome into the betPARX postgame show presented by Lehocky. Seth Joyner, the man, Ray Diddinger, stepping in for Derrick Gunn this week, and I'm Marc Farzetta, and welcome in here to Parx Casino. After we get that sigh of relief out of the way, let's acknowledge the fact that your Philadelphia Eagles have come away with a 22-16 win over the Carolina Panthers. No, they didn't cover the 14-point spread set by betPARX, but they did come away with their 9th consecutive win of the season, and they did improve to 11-2. And Saquon Barkley is now the Eagles' all-time franchise leader for rushing yards in a single season. So certainly something to celebrate. But fellas, I got to ask you this question right out of the gate here: why was this game so close? Why did the Philadelphia Eagles take so long to eventually corral this victory?
You can have it, right?
Fortunately, we have some time. We have a little bit of time to explain all of that because there's a lot to unpack with this game, Mark. The Eagles are very fortunate. The Eagles are very fortunate to come out of this with a win. Before in the pregame show, we all talked about the fact that, and it is true, Carolina has been playing much better football lately. At the beginning of the year, they were a pitiful team, probably the worst team in the league for the first 6 weeks or so. The last 6 weeks, they've actually played pretty respectably. They won a couple games, and the last 2 weeks, they played against first-place teams, Kansas City and Tampa Bay, and took them right down to the wire, including Tampa Bay went to overtime. So coming into this game, the Panthers had shown you that they were starting to play pretty good football, and maybe this game wasn't going to be as easy as everybody thought it was going to be. I don't know that anybody thought it was going to come right down to the end as the way it did here. But I'm inclined to give Carolina credit for playing really well. And I think Dave Canales, their head coach, and their play caller, their offensive coordinator, did a great job calling the game. I mean, look at all the drives that they put together, 10 play drives, 11 play drives, taking long chunks of time off the clock, and kept the game, kept the score down, kept the pace of the game down, and kept his team in the game and gave him a chance to win at the end. The Eagles are very lucky. I mean, on that couple plays right from the end, Xavier Legette is open. I mean, he is open on that play behind the secondary. If he catches that ball, which I thought he did initially, you lose this game. So the Eagles were fortunate to come out of it with a win. You mentioned Saquon Barkley sets the team record for rushing yards in a season, which is no small accomplishment. But to me, bottom line is the Eagles better play better next Sunday against the Pittsburgh Steelers, or this kind of performance is not going to beat the Pittsburgh Steelers.
All fine points, all wonderful points, and you can certainly also make the argument that everyone always makes after games like this. Well, the other team gets paid too, that whole thing.
Right.
But to hell with that for a second. Seth, what were the Philadelphia Eagles doing or not doing that led to this game being so close?
The Eagles won, and normally you want to be positive when they win. I don't know whether I should say they were due for a game like this, as well as they've dominated and played the last few weeks. But this was just bad football across the board, I think, coaching-wise and playing-wise. Let's start with the coaching. They didn't run Saquon Barkley enough in the first half, in my opinion, because I felt like they could have salted the game away if they would have came out with the intent to run him early and dominate the game early. I think he had 8, maybe 9 carries in the entire first half. And the Eagles had a total of 10, 20, 29 plays. Out of 29 plays, Saquon Barkley only ran the ball 9 times. Now, you're a running football team. How does that happen? Okay?
Against the 32nd ranked run defense.
The last run defense in the National Football League, and you only run your top running back 9 times in the first half. The second thing is, I thought the Carolina Panthers defense did a very good job of disguising what they were doing as far as their safeties were concerned. They would give the Eagles a too high look, and then they drop down in the box and drop the safety down in the box. And I don't know whether it was play calling or Jalen making calls at the line of scrimmage, but normally if you get too high safety, especially with the kind of running attack that they have, you want to run the ball against too high safety. When they get in single high safety, then you want to come out and you want to throw the football. Jalen was very indecisive in this game throwing the football. I thought that hurt them early. The play calling left a lot to be desired. And the defense, I felt like this was the defense's worst game that they've had all season. And I'm talking about the worst game from the standpoint of them being able to control the game. Carolina came out and ran the ball consistently on first down, and they were always getting 4 or 5 yards on first down, which meant second and third down was a lot more manageable for Bryce Young and this offense. Vic Fangio did little to rectify that all game long. I don't know what Chuba Hubbard's final stats are for the day, but I would venture to say he rushed for 100 yards today. If you're going to be successful as a defensive football team, you have got to take away the opposing team's running game, and you got to do it early. The longer that they can run the ball effectively, the more wide open the playbook is going to be for them, and they're going to be able to make some plays. The Eagles did a horrible job of rushing the passer today. They got some pressures, but they didn't get one single sack. And the times where they had a chance to get the sack, they could not get the 5'10", 185-pound Bryce Young on the ground. He made a lot of plays today, breaking the pocket, making plays down the field. Coverage-wise, a lot of drop coverages today. As much as I love Cooper DeJean, he got taken to school by Adam Thielen today on more than one occasion. So if you want to know why the game was so close, there it is right there. And for all intents and purposes, the Eagles probably should have lost this game if Leggett catches that football. I don't know what defense they could have possibly been in that Darius Slay allows him to get behind him in that situation. But it was clearly a drop ball. Because if he catches that ball and just rolls into the end zone, it's a touchdown with 45 seconds left on the clock. And do we know whether the Eagles can get in field goal range? I would venture to say that even if they could get in around 50-yard field goal range, that Nick Sirianni, his confidence level with Jake Elliott right now is extremely low. So, listen, we're happy that they got the win, but our job is to analyze the game and how we saw it. And to me, this is one of the worst games that they've played in a long time. Some people call it trap game. I don't know what you call it. I just don't believe in trap games because you got to still go out and you got to play. You got to prepare the same way. And from what we heard leading up to the game, yes, they prepared the same way that they prepared every single week for this game. But they surely didn't. They surely didn't move it over to the field today because they played very lackluster. The linebackers looked like they didn't know where they fit. The double teams was working, the traps were working, and the linebackers weren't fitting, the safeties weren't fitting. It was a tough game to watch because, the Carolina Panthers are getting better, but there's no doubt about it. The Philadelphia Eagles are the better football team across the board. The only bright spot today, in my opinion, was Saquon Barkley. Saquon doing what Saquon does, another 120-plus yard day, and if you give him the touches and you give him the opportunities, he's going to make it happen. But for some reason or another, the Eagles came out today and decided, we want to try to throw the ball a little more than we normally do. And although Jalen's numbers weren't that high, sometimes it's when you throw them, that has a lot to do with it as well. Like, listen, if you're going to rip off 6 yards, 7 yards, 8 yards on first down, why aren't you running the ball again on second down? I just don't understand it. But hopefully we can just chalk this up, fellas, as the one off game that they needed to have in this run, because they run off 8 in a row, 10-2, now 11-2, and it's hard to argue that, but I always say, you guys know, how you play and how you win is as important as if you win, because it's a precursor leading up to how you're going to play the next week. And I'm pretty sure Vic Fangio is going to be on their asses like hot wax, on all week long, because they're not going to get where they want to play, where they want to, playing like that. And on offense, we got to figure it out. You cannot go a full season and not scoring a touchdown in the first quarter. What is going on? Okay, come out and run the football. Dominate the line of scrimmage right out the gate. Nobody cares if you go 10 plays, 70 yards. You had two drives, 10 plays, 70 yards. 8 plays, 70 yards. And you scored touchdowns on those drives. Nobody cares if you got to go the long route. But if the game's going to be minimized the way that it was, eight possessions per team, then you got to score more than 22 points in a game. With all the weapons that Jalen has at his disposal, there's no reason why this team shouldn't be scoring about 30 points a game. And they got to get it figured out, and they better get it figured out quick, because that Pittsburgh Steelers team, they are rolling right now.
Yeah, and still hungry somehow. But you did mention the bright spot for the Eagles. You talked about Saquon Barkley and what he was able to accomplish today. We've alluded to it a couple of different times already, talking about the Eagles' all-time rusher for single-season yards on the ground. Absolutely incredible performance again by him today, and that's why he is our mid-pen bank player to bank on. 20 carries today, no receptions, 124 yards. Interesting. His average for the season per game is about 124, 125 yards per game. He needs to average about 122 yards per game going into today to break Eric Dickerson's record for single-season rushing yards all-time in the NFL. So Saquon Barkley, we salute you in your performance today. Did you wish, Ray, that you saw almost a little bit more Saquon Barkley in the early goings of this game?
I do. I thought that when you have a back who's been playing the way that Saquon Barkley's been playing, which is the best in the National Football League, going up against the worst run defense, it seems like a matter of common sense that's going to be your approach coming in. You're just going to give the ball to Barkley and let him dominate the run defense, which I really think if they had chosen to do, they could have done. And at the times that they did apply that, and that did become their philosophy, they were successful. Early in the game, they came out throwing the ball in ways that I couldn't quite understand why they felt the need to do that. I guess it was your typical coach think, which is, okay, well, they know that we're running the ball. They know we're the number one rushing offense, so they're going to come out and they're going to run the ball. So, that's what they're thinking. So we're going to surprise them and we're going to throw the ball, even though that isn't what we do best. And it got them in trouble. And I think that's one of the reasons why. And look, we've talked a lot about the slow starts. And to this point, you can't say it's hurt them too much because they're 11-2. But as you move down the line here and you start playing the bigger stakes games, and you're heading for the postseason, there's no question about that. A slow start in one of those postseason games can kill you. The other team gets a couple of breaks, gets up on you, then it's going to compromise the coaches thinking about, can we run the ball if we're down 10 points? I mean, all of that kind of thing comes into it and doesn't have to. I would do a couple of things. If I were running the offense, I would try to run the ball more early, and I would try and move at a faster pace. I think when this team, I'm not necessarily saying go full Chip Kelly, no huddle, but I'm saying when this team plays with some tempo on offense, they seem to play better. They seem to play a little slower and a little more flat-footed early in the games, and I don't think it serves them well. And they get out of this game today. They're fortunate to get out of this game today. I guess the coaches will like it because it gives them something to talk about all week and get this team ready to play the Pittsburgh Steelers. But what Seth said is true. The Pittsburgh Steelers, everybody's talking about the Lions, everybody's talking about the Bills, everybody's talking about the Chiefs, but week to week, the Pittsburgh Steelers are playing as good as anybody. And even though they have not, this is an interesting stat, Mark. The Pittsburgh Steelers have not won a game in Philadelphia since 1965. So I'll just throw that fact out there for whatever people think it's worth. But even though that exists, the Pittsburgh Steelers are going to be coming in here playing very good football, and the Eagles will have to play far better next Sunday to come out with a win than what they played today.
Certainly. When we come back, we're going to take a look at whether or not the Eagles did fall into the trap, whether or not they did fall into what many people would assume would be a letdown game. They still won, so I don't believe in that necessarily. But just in terms of how much the Eagles were invested in this game before kickoff, and if that led to this game being closer than a lot of us expected. That's when we return to the betPARX post-game show presented by Lehocky. There it is, Parx Casino, just 20 minutes north of Center City, Philadelphia.
It's happening again. Those missed tackles are starting to stack up. Your friends pleading with players who can't hear them. Sweating it out week after week. But not you. Why? Because whether they score or not, there's always another way to win on the betPARX app. New casino users score up to $1,000 bonus back in their first 24 hours.
It's the most wonderful time with the kids jingle. Be of good cheer. It's the most wonderful.
Whether your phone's broken or old, we've got you. With Verizon, anyone can trade in any phone, any condition. And get iPhone 16 Pro with Apple Intelligence on us. And iPad and Apple Watch Series 10, all three on us. That's up to $2,000 in value, only on Verizon.
Most people don't know how to get the care they need. The experts at Stay at Home Care can help. Before choosing a caregiver or family member for your care, you need to apply for the Home Care Program. The application process can be complicated. Stay at Home Care can help you navigate through every step. Once approved, your caregiver or family member will receive guaranteed weekly pay, a variety of medical benefits options, paid holidays, paid vacation, and overtime pay. Call Stay at Home Care, here to help every step of the way.
This upcoming segment is brought to you by Parx Casino. Welcome back to the betPARX postgame show presented by Lehocky. Marc Farzetta, Seth Joyner, Ray Dittinger in for our friend Derrick Gunn, who's off this week. Father-in-law turns 95. Can't miss that. And you know what? If you're going to miss a game, this wasn't so great, even though the Eagles did pull out the victory. Now, some people's concerns going into this game is that this is an easy game, Seth, for the Eagles to overlook. You have a 3-9 Carolina Panthers team that, sure, has been playing better football as of late, and sure, have been led by a quarterback that seems to have started to figure it out a little bit at the NFL level in Bryce Young. But how much of this loss comes down to the Eagles potentially overlooking their opponent?
Well, it wasn't a loss. It feels like a loss.
I'm sorry, win. How much of this game, I meant to say, yeah.
Listen, you can only play one game at a time. I never understood this whole, trap game thing, looking past an opponent. You got a game to play. And that team has good coaches and some good players. You know, they're trying to build what they got to build, but the way the Eagles have been rolling the last 8 weeks, I think everybody's expectation was for them to come out and really dominate this football game in a massive way. And, to be home in your own backyard and to come out as mediocre as they played all day long, I don't understand it. I don't understand it. And sometimes, sometimes when you have a win streak like this, sometimes in order for the win streak to continue, you need one of these wake-up games, if you will, one of these games that forces you to kind of refocus, because it's real easy to get to a place when you're running them off one after another to just expect to just show up and everything just falls into place the way you think it should fall into place. I just remind people that every single team has good players in the National Football League. There's only 1,696 players in all of the NFL. Some teams are better because they've got a better front office, they got better players, and they got better coaches. But there's no bad teams, in my opinion, in the National Football League. They're bad comparatively to the good teams, but there are no bad teams. And they play the game every Sunday because you got to match wits and you got to match wills and you got to match strategies every single week. And all you got to do is have one off week where you're not doing the things you need to do from a player perspective and not making the right decisions from a coaching perspective, and you wind up losing football games. They were fortunate to get away with this one today on so many levels, but they got to figure it out. They've got a lot they've got to figure out. The defense has been ascending, and this is the game where today, to me, they just kind of plateaued. They couldn't get to the quarterback. They couldn't stop the run game. They were terrible on third down situations. They were terrible in containing Bryce Young and keeping him in the pocket. If there's ever such thing as them taking a step backwards, I felt like today was the day where they didn't play well defensively. Other than Zach Bond was just all over the place. I mean, just, he easily could have been, our player to bank on today instead of Saquon. We get to a point where we kind of expect for Saquon to do what Saquon does. But I just, they got to figure it out. It's going to be interesting to watch because, you got a team coming in here next week. Their intention is to hit you in the mouth in every shape, fashion, and form. They're going to run the ball down your throat. They're going to play solid defense, and they're going to go play action pass and get, Russ on the edges and try to get him outside the pocket, and that's where he's the most dangerous is when he's on the move with the football, and we got torched today. I wouldn't necessarily say torched from a numbers perspective, but Bryce Young made a lot of plays outside of the pocket where we let him get outside and get away and step through, and we've got to shore that up, and we've got to fix that.
Right, let me ask you the same question. When it comes to, you talk about execution, you talk about the way they played overall, but how much of that, if anything, do you attribute to the idea that people believe when you talk about letdown games, you talk about trap games? Did this team lose focus and overlook the Panthers and look ahead to the Steelers?
I think there was probably some of that. I mean, I know that players and former players like Seth never like to buy into the idea of sandwich games, trap games, whatever you want to call them. But I've been around it long enough that I know that it does happen. When you have a team that's on a kind of roll that the Eagles have, and you have exactly this kind of situation where you have a really tough opponent in the Baltimore Ravens, a game you really absolutely have to be totally focused on, and you win that. And then you look 1 week down the road and you get the Pittsburgh Steelers who are playing really good football. And in between, you got a 3-9 team that's been stumbling for a good portion of the year. Not lately, but for most of the year. I think there's a natural sort of human emotion that sort of, okay, yes, the biorhythms are high some weeks, but they're a little lower on others. And I think this was one of them, and I think you saw that. This was, interestingly enough, coming into this, I don't think anybody saw this as a game where there'd be 5 lead changes. I mean, every time the Eagles took the lead, I thought, and I think they probably thought, okay, now they're going to go away. Okay, they played good up to this point, but okay, now we got the lead, and now we're just going to grind it out. And the Panthers just didn't quit. I mean, they kept fighting back and fighting and fighting, which I don't know that everybody expected that. But what was interesting about this, even though this isn't a great team that you played today, this is the first time in this winning streak that the Eagles were behind in the fourth quarter. Every other one of these wins that they've had, they went into the fourth quarter and they were in control, fully in control. This was the first time, and they never saw it coming against this team. This was the first time in this win streak that in the fourth quarter they were behind, and they had to figure out a way to win, and they did. Give them credit for that. But I think that the idea of, was there a letdown factor that allowed all this to happen? Yeah, I think there probably was. But listen, there are letdown kinds of games in the league every week. And good teams lose to lesser teams all the time. Give the team credit for coming back and actually winning the game at the end. But that Leggett pass, I mean, you and I were sitting next to each other. I mean, that was one with your heart's in your mouth when you see that, because you see the wide shot of the field and you see him fully behind the secondary, and Young put that ball right on the money. And he dropped it. If he catches that ball, we're having a whole different conversation here tonight.
Yeah, we're not talking about a moral loss.
No.
We're talking about an actual loss, unfortunately, which is far worse, by the way, for the record. Now, yeah, it's not lost on us that we were talking about the defense there for a second with Seth, and this team still allowed just 16 points. Granted, yes, it was to the Panthers, and other teams in the league have done far worse than that against the Panthers, but still, just 16 points against another NFL team.
5 straight games you've held teams under 20. That's not easy to do.
That's amazing, and the Eagles were able to do that again today. It doesn't feel like Jalen Hurts played any spectacular game, yet he was responsible for 3 touchdowns today, all 3 touchdowns that the Eagles were able to score. And then in the moment that Ray was referring to, in terms of finally putting the Panthers almost out of their misery and taking control of this game, I thought that was going to happen when the Eagles put up their 22nd point of the game, and that was when they had the touchdown pass. And this is actually our Davis Honda drive of the game for the Philadelphia Eagles. Third quarter, 2:49 left in that third quarter. Carolina Panthers are up 16-14 over the Eagles, so they're enjoying the lead. The Eagles then, at the end of the third quarter and into the fourth quarter, amass an 8-play, 70-yard drive that goes 4:04 on the clock. Grant Calcaterra is able to cap it off with a 4-yard touchdown reception, his first touchdown reception of his career. And then, thanks to a penalty, the Eagles decide to line up and go for it on the 2-point conversion, and Saquon Barkley bounces it to the outside for a 1-yard run to be able to punch that in for the 2-point conversion. And that right there, Seth, is where the Eagles not put the game out of reach, not took control, but of course got the edge.
Well, they got some comfort in that moment, but man, we were all the way it ended up. My goodness, I mean, you get they're driving, and they have to punt the ball. The offense stalls out, and they pin them at the 1, and you got all of these opportunities to stop this game and get this game under wraps, and the defense lets them out on 2 occasions where Bryce Young is scrambling and hits a guy wide open, converts on a 4th down. I forgot to even look. I don't even know what the 4th down conversions were like for Carolina today, but they converted on a lot of 4th downs. That's something where
7 for 15.
Yeah, and
which
the
is
Eagles,
pretty good.
Yeah, and the Eagles are pretty darn good, in those situations. But listen, it's a huge drive. I don't know. I mean, it's funny that, you mentioned what you mentioned. Jalen Hurts accounted for 3 touchdowns today, 2 4-yard touchdowns, 1 to Smitty, 1 to Calc, and then 1 tush push. But when you look at his numbers, 14 for 21, 108 yards, I'm like, how in the world do you play a 60-minute football game and put the ball in the air 21 times and only walk away with 108 yards? Like, whatever the issue is, they got to figure this out. Jalen's got to – their routes – I seen Jalen throw 1 route today where the ball was on time. That deep 3rd down conversion, 3rd and 13, they got 14 yards. Jalen dropped back, and before A.J. Brown even turned around, that ball was on him. Perfect throw. Comes back, he had another one to Smitty, and he was late on it, I mean, we're at the point in the season where these types of plays and these types of routes where he knows what the route is, okay? And he knows that if he throws the ball with great rhythm and great timing, that the wide receiver is either going to make the catch or it's going to be an incomplete play. It's not one of those situations where you're letting the ball go and the defender's going to break on it like a deep out or something. We're talking about comeback routes and stop routes, Ray. He's got to just let the ball go. And I don't know whether in his mind he's protecting against turning the ball over, but there's this fine line between making plays and playing the game all out and being overly protective of the football. I get it. You don't want to turn it over. But as the quarterback of this football team, there were plays there today to be made. There was throws to be made, and he looked very apprehensive about letting it go. And I just don't understand, at this point in time of the season, when you know what the routes are and you know what the play call is and you practice them all week, why there's hesitation in these areas sometimes. Sometimes he looks like he's just on it. And then other times, like there's this air of uncertainty in his mind, and you can't play football that way. Everything that you do has to be, I got this, I got this, I got this, and I don't see that out of him all the time.
Mm-hmm. Go.
Well, I think Seth's right about that. And I think that the route that he was talking about, which was a big 3rd down completion, that's the way it's supposed to work. It's supposed to be when you got a receiver like that who's running a deep out comeback, the ball has to be thrown on time. There's a rhythm to that, and it did seem to be missing today, except on that one play. But in the drive to the Calcaterra touchdown, which puts you back up ahead again, the big play in that drive is Hurts' 35-yard run. Mm-hmm. You start that drive with a couple of really good Barkley runs
on 3rd and 10.
Yes, and you start that drive with 2 really good Barkley runs, like a 12 and a 14 to start the drive, and you think that this is going to be one of these Barkley. This is going to be a Barkley drive. It's just going to be all the way down the field. And on a 3rd and 10, you're in a situation where you're going to throw it, and Hurts drops back, and you see the whole field open up, and he takes off. 35-yard run, longest run of the year for him. Then they take it in, they finish it off, and they get the lead back. So he makes a real big play there with his legs to help you regain the lead and get back in control of the game. But there is something that has to be worked out in the passing game. I mean, there were a couple of shots that people watching on TV, saw Brown and Smith sitting on the bench talking.
Yeah.
You know, and they weren't talking about, have you written up your Christmas cards yet? I mean, you could see that they weren't talking about, hey, did you put your tree up yet? I mean, there was some genuine concern and a little angst in both of their faces about what's going on right now with the offense, and not necessarily why am I not getting the ball, but what's happening in the passing game. You know, and I know we're going to win by running the ball, and I think we should because that's our strength right now. But there's something in the passing game now that has to get worked out if they're going to beat the better teams that lie ahead.
I think, to Ray's earlier point, and we were talking about it in the pregame, in the second half of last week's game, 6 of the longest 10 plays, they ran it out of no huddle. And I think that their offense operates a lot more proficiently when they get into no huddle. Like when they get stalled out and the offense just isn't, doing what it needs to do. Like, for example, the first 2 series of the game, they went 6 plays, 9 yards, punt. Then they went 3 plays, 5 yards, punt. Then they went 10 plays, 70 yards, touchdown. Then they went 3 plays, punt, 7 plays, touchdown, okay? When you listen to that, there's not a whole lot of rhythm to their offense and how the offense is probably being called. Just go to, like when Saquon rips off a 12-yard run, a 13-yard run, and gets the first down, go no huddle right there to try to find some rhythm to your offense and get your quarterback going. You've got that package in where Jalen can either make the call or he's getting a call from the sideline, whatever it is. Let's kind of speed it up. Now you prevent the other side of the ball from making, substitutions. Now you got some rhythm to your offense. You run 5 or 6 plays, guys get gassed. The offense has got some flow to it. I think that potentially may be, Ray, the thing that can really help them, because I noticed a lot last week when they had success offensively late in the game, they were basically in no huddle. And Jalen was just running the offense from the line of scrimmage.
Well, you clearly have an issue at the start of games. You clearly have an offensive issue at the start of the games, which, I mean, you've certainly worked around it to the point of winning 11 out of 13, but to say, oh, there's nothing to worry about, I wouldn't say that. I mean, if as a coaching staff, that's something you would sit down and you would talk about and say, what can we do? I mean, we can't continue not to find the end zone until the second quarter. That's just not acceptable if we really do want to go on and win a Super Bowl. And I think one of the ways, I mean, you can look at your play calling, which probably could be a little bit better in those situations. But part of it is, I think it's a matter of tempo. I would like to see them come out and try and play a little bit quicker early in the game. Just something different like that. Maybe have the quarterback under center, maybe a little bit more early. Just do something to change up what you're doing right now, because I don't want to take the whole team apart because they're playing too well. But address the things that need addressing. And the slow starts are part of that. And I think coming out and playing at a quicker tempo earlier in the game. They go to it late and it's generally successful. Okay, let's come to it early and see if that maybe can get us over the hump and get some points on the board in the first quarter.
Ray, the other thing that I think too is that, when I get a chance to look at this and watch this game, the All-22, I think some of the route combinations, leave a little bit to be desired. Because when I watch other teams and, the quarterback comes to the line of scrimmage, he predetermines what the coverage is. He checks at the line of scrimmage, and they've got plays that are designed to beat certain coverages. I think that oftentimes we make calls of plays that aren't necessarily designed to beat a coverage, but the players are designed for the players to beat a specific guy or to get in a specific zone where, you'll get, two guys, one guy going in, one guy going out, and then you get a dig behind it, okay? So now if they're sitting in zone, you're pulling 2 guys out of a zone because they're influenced, but you're bringing the 3rd guy into the zone. I think that they need that type of design, and teams have caught on to what they like to do, where they go to double tight ends to one side and both of the wide receivers here, and they try to cross them up. You saw Carolina do a really good job of drop the safety down late so that they could take away the crosser that usually gets rubbed and that guy's free. So teams are going to figure out, okay, this is what they like to do when they're trying to really create some separation. When it's man-to-man, it's different. Guys have got to win routes when it's man-to-man. But against zone, you got to have some different things some different routes that are like, you got to have cover 2 beaters, cover 4 beaters, cover 3. Everybody else in the National Football League has that. But when I watch the Eagles sometimes, especially when they give us the view from behind the quarterback, and we're like, Jalen is not getting rid of the ball. There are often times where I look, there's nobody open for Jalen to throw the ball to because they're playing zone, but they're playing match zone. So the minute a guy gets into my zone, I match. So if you don't have guys dissecting and crossing in zones, then when I drop to my landmark, the first guy that drops to my hook, the curl, I just man up on him. Across the board, that's happening. So guys are not going to be open in those circumstances. So I think their design sometimes leaves a lot to be desired in how Jalen is able to throw the football. And then, quite honestly, there are just times where, he just doesn't make the correct read. The touchdown to Devontae Smith, that was a much harder throw than the throw that was right there in front of him. A.J. Brown was wide open. Right from the go. And he's looking that way. You can't tell me that you don't see him crossing your face, but you're waiting for the out route to break. That's the easy throw. I could be on my knees and make that throw, right?
Throw it through the line. Make a passing lane. All right, when we come back, we've been monitoring the chat to see what you guys have been saying about this. Bailey Livesey, our social media coordinator, will be along to break it all down with us. That's when we return here on the betPARX postgame show presented by Lehocky. The 360 Lounge here at Parx Casino. Enjoy some fine drinks and fantastic entertainment.
At Lehocky Giordano, we understand the impact an injury can have on your life. Our experienced attorneys have recovered billions of dollars for our clients, and we know we can do the same for you. One conversation is all it takes to help you and your family get back on track. If you've been injured at work, give Lehocky a call.
Since 1893, Weber Display and Packaging has been Pennsylvania's leading manufacturer of corrugated packaging and displays. We're family-owned with 4 Philadelphia locations, 2 converting facilities, a warehouse, and a fulfillment center. Designed through delivery, we exceed customer needs. Weber Display and Packaging. Our core values drive everything we do. Come join our team.
This is Parx.
This is how you roll, this is how it goes. This is how you pop, this is how you rock. Take a chance, do a dance, little romance. This is how you. This is how you win. This is how you excite, this is how you all night. 360 hit me, now we're going all in. I can feel it calling, the crowd, the light, the night, the sights, the vibe is right. This is how you. This is
Parx, Pennsylvania's #1 casino experience. This is how you win.
At Revolution X, we know that fortunes are made in times of uncertainty. Are you selling your investment real estate? Are you interested in deferring your tax with a 1031 exchange? At RevX, we're experts in 1031 exchange planning and the use of passive real estate options using DSTs. Not in the midst of an exchange and want to invest in real estate but don't know where to start? Revolution X has institutional-grade real estate options for any size investor right now. Set up a consultation at RevXWealth.com. RevX, defer the tax, maximize the gain.
This upcoming segment is brought to you by Lehocky. Welcome back to the betPARX postgame show. Marc Farzetta, Ray Dittinger joining us this week, and of course, Seth Joyner. Make sure you guys are following Seth on all social media platforms for some fantastic giveaways, and also liking, subscribing, and hitting that notifications bell on YouTube as well on the Seth Joyner Show YouTube channel. Now, we've been monitoring the chat, and here is our social media correspondent, Bailey Livesey, to let us know what you guys have been talking about in that chat. Bailey, how's it going?
Well, thank you, Mark. I am doing great. I hope you guys all are doing great as well. And big thanks to everyone who has commented questions. For our first one, the viewers are absolutely not happy with Jalen Hurts' performance. Give us your thoughts and what has to change.
I'll say this first, and I'll give it over to you guys. Jalen Hurts had 3 touchdowns today, 2 passing, 1 on the ground. However, I feel like everything that he does with his legs doesn't count to certain people. I feel like that's all panic, that's all in case of emergency, break glass, and he runs with the football. And people don't give him any credit for it when that's a great part of his game, and still that was part of his game when the Eagles went to a Super Bowl 2 years ago. However, if you're watching this game today, I was hoping, as we were talking about on the pregame show, that Jalen Hurts would have the type of game that going into the fourth quarter, that Saquon Barkley could rest, he could rest, all the starters could rest. if he's making better reads, if receivers are running better routes, I don't know. But it comes down to Jalen Hurts for me, and this wasn't a game where I felt like he shut up a lot of haters. But with that being said, we're talking about a bad game he had, and he still had 3 touchdowns in this game. So that's what I'll take away. He didn't shut up any haters, unfortunately, but overall, I know a lot of people are going to be looking at this game saying, most of us with the legs doesn't count.
Yeah, I suspect that's probably right. I think you're probably going to have a week where on talk radio, that's what the conversation's going to be. People are going to be generally unhappy with the overall performance, but it's all going to come back to the quarterback as it usually does. I think this was not his best game. You have to talk about the big run, the 35-yard run that really helps them get to the go-ahead touchdown. There's no question about that. He made some big plays running the football, but he didn't throw the ball well in certain situations. I didn't think he saw the field all that well, missed some open receivers. You go back and watch the film, you'll see A.J. Brown's open, the one play for sure for a touchdown, but there were other times that he was open that he just wasn't seen and didn't get the football. That has to change. I thought that in terms of throwing the ball, not his best game. There were some times his judgment with the ball, not the best. I mean, there were a couple of times that he allowed himself to get trapped in the pocket, times he needed to throw the ball away and didn't. Took sacks I thought were unnecessary. So overall, if I were grading him, look, you win the game. He didn't turn the ball over. He didn't do any of the things that get you beat. He ultimately found a way to help you win. But similar to what I said about the team earlier on, he's going to have to play better than this next Sunday because he's going to be playing against a much better Pittsburgh defense.
You know, I talked about it in the pregame that Nick Sirianni's record is now 46-19. You cannot discount the fact that the only quarterback that Nick Sirianni has ever had is Jalen Hurts. So if Nick Sirianni is 46-19, that means your quarterback, Jalen Hurts, is 46-19. You know, the objective is to win football games. Whether it's sexy or not, you want to win football games. But, it's a big but. All the Jalen detractors, his play today is going to give fodder for the entire week for validation of why they don't like him and why they don't think, you know, he's good enough to take this team to the promised land. That's just a fact. You know, I mean, Bryce Young outplayed Jalen today. If you really want to be honest, and if we're all going to be honest about it, you know, if you remove the touchdowns, you know, he outplayed him today. From the standpoint of being able to manage the offense and move his team down the field and make plays, Bryce Huff outplayed Jalen Hurts today, okay? But nobody really cares about that because at the end of the day, it's about wins and losses. This football team won. So my big worry is what Jalen Hurts and what Philadelphia Eagles offense and defense are we going to see next week? Because we can sit here and break this down. That's our job. That's what we do. We could talk about it, but there's nothing that we can talk about that's going to change the performance that was put on the field today. It is what it is. It was what it was, okay? So now, let's look forward to next week, and let's see what next week looks like, whether Jalen can take the step that everybody's expecting him to take, whether, you know, the play calling can be better and the performance by the defense can be better than it was this week. You know, as much as we lauded them for being such a dominant team in every phase of the game, the last 8 weeks, you know, we'd be remiss in our duty if we didn't talk about, you know, how inept they look to this today in this game, okay? That's what we're here to do. Everything else is just, you know, the truth is the truth.
Mm-hmm. This game might have been a feather in the cap of the Jalen Hurts. I hate to call it haters, consistently call it haters. Maybe they see themselves as truthers or whatever you want to call it. But for me, the needle hadn't moved at all in this game for me with Jalen Hurts. You're talking about a guy, again, 3 touchdowns. You're talking about Bryce Young. You can talk about his interception could have been and probably was the difference in the game. Because after that, the Eagles were able to get a touchdown after the CJ-GJ interception. They go down the field and they get the Devontae Smith touchdown. And, yeah, he could have obviously opted to go and throw the touchdown to A.J. Brown over the middle instead of Smitty. But, hey, welcome back, Smitty. But all in all, this game didn't move the needle for me with Jalen Hurts, positively or negatively. If anything, we're talking about how he played a terrible game and he had 3 touchdowns. Bottom line. Oh, and they won, too. Little cherry on top there.
Well, I think one of the things that will be talked about all week long in terms of preparing for the Pittsburgh Steelers is it's what when coaches prepare for games, They talk about the things that you need to do to win, but they also at the same time talk about the things we have to avoid so we don't lose. You know, you have to look at it both ways. And with the Pittsburgh Steelers, when you play the Pittsburgh Steelers, the thing with the Steelers is the Steelers are number 1 in the NFL in takeaways. Their defense is built on being opportunistic and taking the ball away. They've had 25 takeaways coming into this weekend. That's largely how they win. And so stressing it from the coach's standpoint this week, this is going to come down on the offense, and it's going to come down particularly on Jalen Hurts. Look, Jalen, we can't turn the ball over against these guys. That's how they win. That's how they're built. That's how they play. We can't make mistakes. We can't turn the ball over. And that's the thing that Hurts throughout this streak has been really good at, is not making mistakes, not turning the ball over. And he didn't turn it over again today. So he didn't do anything spectacular. You know, he didn't win any MVP votes. You know, he's not, statistically, he didn't do a whole lot. But he didn't turn the ball over, and he got you the win. And that's going to be the focus moving forward, I think. You
know, the Steelers had 2 more interceptions today. I guess the Lord didn't deliver Jameis from the interception.
3 takeaways in total by the Steelers. But yeah, the Jameis Winston interceptions are like half an interception for a defense. I mean, you're guaranteed to get at least 2. Bailey, what else do you have for us?
Well, some of the comments suggest that every team has an off game and that we should move on. We won. Do you guys agree?
I honestly, I hate that mentality. I understand it, and we hear it a lot. But going into the Baltimore game, we always talk about things like they can't play this way against an upper echelon team and win. Well, they didn't start out well against the Baltimore Ravens either, and they won that game. What's more disappointing is the fact that they downshifted back into this mode of play against a team that was far inferior to them in the Carolina Panthers. And I understand, and we talked about it on pregame, that they've been playing so much better as of late. They've been playing a lot better football, and their quarterback has started to figure it out. And yeah, for the most part, Bryce Young impressed me today. But to see the Eagles fall back and almost play down to an opponent is very disappointing for the level of play we've gotten used to see the Eagles playing at so far this season.
Well, listen, we're breaking down the game, and that's what it is. But show me a team this year, the top 4 or 5 teams in the National Football League, and the Eagles are certainly one of those teams, but show me one of those teams in the top 4 or 5 that did not have a game like this year and still found a way to win the game. You know, that's just life. You understand what I'm saying, right?
Yeah. The Chiefs have been doing it every week.
They've been doing it every week. You know, the Detroit Lions have been doing it over the last 5-game stretch. You know, the list could go on and on. So we're going to talk about it because that's what we do. But I think at the end of the day, you know, if you're honest with yourself, there's teams across the board that have had games like the Eagles had today and come back the next week and put the train back on the tracks and kept on trucking along. So, you know, that's all. Like I said, the game is over. That's all they can do. That's all we can hope for, is that this was a 1-week aberration of bad play. They found a way to win the game against a team that they should have beat, and hopefully we can move on and see an exciting game next week.
I mean, that's how I feel. I mean, I'm just about the wins and the losses. If you win, it doesn't have to be pretty. It doesn't have to be artistic. Just win. The people who are going to be unhappy, and there's probably thousands of them out there that are watching us right now, that bet the Eagles and laid the 14 points. They're very unhappy. They're very unhappy. But
that was a setup from the beginning.
But that's a whole different discussion. The discussion really is just, where is this team? How good are they? And how far can they go? And you won a game today that you needed to stay right on the heels of the Detroit Lions if they stumble to get to the number 1 seed. You had to win this game, pretty or otherwise, and they were able to do it. But just be aware, and I'll say it again, you're going to have to play a lot better than this against the Pittsburgh Steelers.
Yeah, absolutely. When we do look at the Lions, though, we did just talk about them in the pregame, just being able to get by the Packers, a divisional game by 3 points. Before that, let's not forget on Thanksgiving, only beating the Bears by some horrible coaching decisions by the Bears, and then only winning that game by 3 points against a far inferior opponent in the Chicago Bears as well. Bailey, last question. What do you have for us?
All right, last question. Drum roll, please. The viewers want to know, do we have a kicker problem on our hands?
It's a little scary, I'll say that. I mean, maybe it's just shell shock from watching Justin Tucker struggle as bad as he was struggling against the Eagles last week. But now this is, two of the last 3 games where we've been a little shaky watching Jake Elliott kick. Is there a kicker problem?
Well, you're into December now, and he hasn't made anything beyond 50 yards. That's a concern. And he's missed a couple PATs now. Am I concerned? Yeah, I am. Now, do I think it's to the point where the coaches are going to start bringing in other kickers and having tryouts on Wednesday and Thursday? We've all seen that. Oh, who's this guy? Oh, well, he's just coming in to kick a few. Oh, yeah, really? I don't think that the coaches are at that point with Jake Elliott. But I will say this. For a guy who, at this time a year ago, when he went on the field, to me, automatic. I never even thought about him missing. Now I think you got to be a little worried about it. But the coaches are just going to believe in him and hope that he fights his way through this. They're not about to make a change. But is my confidence a little shaken? Yeah, but I think he'll come out of it.
Excuse me, 2 games in the last 4, not 3. 4 games now. 4 games ago was the Commanders game where he was struggling a little bit. Worried about Jake Elliott?
You know, I think anytime your kicker is off, you're worried about it because you never know. You know, anytime you put him in a critical situation in the game in the past, you knew that it was automatic. It was money, you know, even from 50 yards. Now, he's struggling from 50 yards, and he's missed the extra point, and he actually missed one today, but they were fortunate enough to get a penalty, allowed him to, you know, to
pick up the 2.
To pick up the 2-point conversion. I think his confidence is just a little bit shaken. I think if you go back, I believe it was the Browns game. Was it the Browns game when Nick was making all those crazy decisions?
Yes.
Yeah.
And
Jacksonville.
Jacksonville.
Yeah.
The Jacksonville game. And, you know, kickers are so finicky. You know what I'm saying? It's like, I'm pretty sure during that Jacksonville game, he was standing on the sideline inside asking himself, is there something wrong with me? Has Nick lost confidence in me? You understand what I'm saying? So sometimes the decisions that a coach makes, they go so far beyond what we can even imagine, you know, because kickers are wired that way. I know it for a fact. I've played long enough and been around enough of them to know that they get very, very finicky, you know. So going through what he went through in the Jacksonville game and the psychological effect it's had on him, maybe that's playing a role into why he's struggling a little bit right now. Because when someone has confidence in you, that raises your level of confidence. You know, when someone loses a level of confidence in you, that begins to, if you're not mentally strong, that makes you begin to think and wonder to yourself, does he not believe in me? You know, and ever since that game, he's been struggling ever since that game. Like, he wasn't struggling at all leading up to that game. I don't know how many kicks he missed, but I probably can count them on 3 fingers up until that point. But since that Jacksonville game, he's been struggling mightily, you know, with extra points and field goals over 50 yards.
Certainly possible. Bailey, Livesey, thank you so much for joining us, and thanks for keeping up with everything that's going on in that chat.
Of course. Thank you, guys.
Absolutely. Bailey Livesey joining us right there, our social media coordinator. When we return, we're going to talk about a very amazing giveaway that we have for you guys coming up. And also, we're going to talk about CJGJ leaving the game, coming back in the game, getting an interception to help set up a touchdown for the Eagles. The sports doc, Dr. Bruce Grossing, will be joining us, talk about some of the injuries in this game today. That's when we return to the betPARX postgame show presented by Pond Lehocky. The betPARX Sportsbook. Hopefully you laid some points there when it came to the Panthers. Won yourself some money.
It's the most wonderful time with the kids jingle. Be of good cheer. It's the most wonderful.
Whether your phone's broken or old, we've got you. With Verizon, anyone can trade in any phone, any condition. And get iPhone 16 Pro with Apple Intelligence on us. And iPad and Apple Watch Series 10, all 3 on us. That's up to $2,000 in value, only on Verizon.
Hello? And the next thing I knew, I woke up in a hospital bed. Has a friend ever told you a story about an accident and someone says,
you should probably sue them.
Forget your friend. Call Pond Lehocky Giordano.
We're an injury law firm that's recovered billions of dollars for our clients.
And with our vast network of attorneys throughout the country, we know we can do the same for you.
So if you've been injured in an accident, give Pond Lehocky a call.
One conversation is all it takes, and you won't pay a dime until we win.
Sell your car to us, no hassle, no fuss. DavisBuysCars.com.
Did you know that Davis Honda will pay top dollar for your car? Go to DavisBuysCars.com. and get an instant quote on your vehicle. We'll make the purchase as easy as possible and put cash in your hand faster than you can say DavisBuysCars.com.
Sell your car to us, no hassle, no fuss. DavisBuysCars.com.
Gentlemen, are you ready for a wardrobe update? Introducing Divine Nine's Custom Menswear, your clothier for truly unique, custom-made threads. With Divine Nine, you can design your own one-of-a-kind suit, jacket, slacks, shirts, golf pants, and shorts, perfectly handcrafted by our skilled artisans who will bring your vision to life. Prepare to stand out from the crowd with Divine Nine's Custom Clothier, official clothier of Seth Joyner. Custom clothing made for you.
This upcoming segment is brought to you by Verizon. Joining us momentarily is going to be our friend, the sports doc, Dr. Bruce Grossing here. But one of the things we've been doing on this post-game show, Seth, is giving away some fantastic thing. What items do we have today?
So we've got a mini helmet sign and a football sign. We're about to give that away here in a little bit. We also got, the 2 jerseys yet to be given away. We're going to give away the Jalen Hurts jersey. We picked a heck of a game to give away the Jalen Hurts jersey, right? But we're giving away the Jalen Hurts jersey this week. You'll see the graphic come up here in a little bit. It tells you how to get involved. All of the social media, outlets. We will pick the winner of that jersey, that Jalen Hurts jersey, and announce it next week in post-game show after the Steelers game. All right?
There you go. It beats a Jake Elliott jersey, so that's good. When it comes to this giveaway, it's a ball and a helmet, and congratulations to John Young, who wins the ball and the helmet, courtesy of the Seth Joyner Show. We appreciate you following Seth on all social media platforms. Make sure you're liking and subscribing and following and all that, and notifying, hitting the notification button as well for all of the Seth Joyner Show YouTube content, including this post-game show. So, John Young, congratulations. You win a ball and a helmet, courtesy of the Seth Joyner Show and courtesy of Seth Joyner himself.
Congrats.
How great is that? Without further ado, now there was some injuries that took place in this game today, some injuries the Eagles are still dealing with. Devontae Smith comes back. Obviously, Dallas Goedert is on IR now, could be coming back for the playoffs. Hopefully will be coming back for the playoffs. So let's jump on the line right now and talk to our friend, Dr. Bruce Grossing, our sports doc. Dr. Bruce, first off, Devontae Smith made his return after missing the last 2 games with a hamstring injury. How did Devontae look to you today?
He looked just fine, and he made a very important touchdown catch and seemed like he was running fine. They weren't targeting him too much during the game, but from a physical standpoint, it was certainly good having him back. And I didn't see any. I didn't think he was any worse for wear.
Yeah, we're always concerned, especially when you talk about speed guys and guys that run such precise routes, such as Devontae Smith. How do you think that he could have played last week, and this was just being cautious with him? How about that?
I think he might have been able to play. I know that he did warm up, and he didn't put pads on, but I think it was clear that they were going to sit him out, and they ended up winning last week. So in retrospect, I'm glad, that with the hamstring, you want him to be at full strength, especially, going into the Steelers week. So I think they've been making a lot of good decisions medically.
Doc, my concern is Dallas Goedert. Originally they said they were not, overly concerned that it was a big issue. And then a few days later, boom, they put him on IR. So he's on IR for the next 4 weeks. Any word on exactly what it is and, whether 4 weeks is enough to get him back at full strength?
It's very interesting. They're very tight-lipped about the pathology. I looked at a lot of different media sites, and I was looking for an anatomic diagnosis, whether this was a strain or whether this was some partial tear or something, but they just didn't release that. And again, you have a very strong eagle eye, Seth. Last week you picked it out, and this week they've been mum, except just putting him on IR. And so they've really kept us in the dark, but obviously he's an important guy, and he's been injured on and off even throughout his career here. Soft tissue injuries to the hip, to the knee, to the ankle. And, just the big picture is, looking at the end of the year, are they going to re-sign this guy after he's missed so much time, albeit the fact he's such a great player, and this is just yet another hiccup.
I'm somewhat concerned about Darius Slay. Quite a few times today, he looked to be hobbled one time. He came in and made a tackle on the edge and kind of grabbed his ribs. He doesn't look like he has the burst, even though, he made a couple of really good plays.
The one that ended the game.
Yeah, toward the one that ended the game where he kind of broke underneath the wide receiver and knocked the ball down. I know from experience, Doc, when you get older and you get those injuries during the year, it's a lot harder for those injuries to heal up during the year than they are when you're 20-something years old and when you're 30-something years old. Any concerns about his health and some of the injuries he's sustained, over the last so many weeks?
Yeah, like you alluded to, he's a very stoic guy, and as Ray noted, he made a great play. So he's a guy I just see battling injuries, battling lower extremity soft tissue injuries, training hard, preparing hard every week, and when you're at that age, you don't want to look behind you. Somebody else could be gaining on you, and I just tip my hat to him because he certainly lost his step as opposed to the previous years, but yet he always seems to get his nose in and make a good play, and that's why he doesn't let us use his first name. We could just call him Slay.
His mama called him Darius. I'm going to call him Darius.
Doctor, the one question for me is C.J. Gardner-Johnson was involved in a play, clearly was stunned, was taken off the field. They said they were examining him for a concussion. The way of the NFL today is generally when guys go off the field looking like that and are tested like that, you rarely see them come back in the game. Were you a little surprised to see him back and playing in the second half? Because I was.
I really was. And if we looked at last week, Seth brought up Kyle Hamilton of the Ravens, the amazing safety. It was almost the same scenario. And he brought it up last week. He said, how did Blankenship just went to the sideline and never came back? And this is a scenario where CJGJ, not easy to say those letters all the time, especially on camera, basically what, he was definitely woozy. He was knocked out. Then he went into the tent for quite a while. Then they took him into the locker room. Then he came back and played again. And if you note, then he got injured again in the game. And this time he was laying, face down in a prone position, writhing in pain. And he was like kicking his legs. I'm sure you had to have seen that because the cameras were on that for a long period of time. And inexplicably, he then came back in the game and made a good play. So I don't know. I'm sure the recurrent injury was not a concussion because I don't think they could have in their right mind put it back. But he suffered some type of recurrent injury. And again, I think he's one of the hardest hitters and toughest guys. It was just amazing. And he made that interception. So I presume that he had to literally pass an independent neurologic exam, a team neurology exam. He had to be well-oriented, fluent, his memory, his eye movements, and his balance. So, Ray, you're right. It was curious to me, and he really prevailed.
Doc, two more names for you. I just want to run by you. Both the same position. We're talking about a concussion with Reed Blankenship, didn't play. We're also now talking about, though, a knee injury with Sidney Brown. Eagles are shorthanded at the safety spot. What could you tell me about Blankenship, if anything, and what could you tell me about Sidney Brown?
From what I heard, Blankenship is working his way through the concussion protocol, and it's hard to really go through all the steps, 5 steps in a week. So as far as I've heard, there are no setbacks for Blankenship, and I would say that they need him, and I think he'll be back against the Steelers. And as far as the other gentleman you mentioned, just Brown, with knee injuries with Sidney Brown, I just think the Eagles are very cryptic about their knee injuries, and Dallas Goedert's a perfect example. So I can't really speculate, but he's an important player. He's really had a great second part of the season, and I'm hoping by next week I'll have some more information, and And better yet, I hope he's actually going to play in the game.
Fantastic. Dr. Bruce Grossinger, our sports doc, we appreciate you joining after this one and each and every week. Thanks, Doc.
Thanks so much.
Appreciate it. All right, when we come back, there appears to be some drama stirring in the Eagles locker room. We'll break it down as it pertains to the Eagles passing attack. That's when we return to the betPARX postgame show presented by Lehocky. Parx Casino, just 20 minutes north of Center City, Philadelphia.
Pride, passion, and persistence. These are the values that drive us all at Ron Jaworski Golf. We strive to deliver outstanding conditions as well as playability for golfers of all ages and abilities. Our championship golf courses offer a variety of challenges from a link-style walk along the river to an escape into the pines and everything in between. My team at Ron Jaworski Golf is committed to delivering memorable experiences every single day. See all we do at ronjaworskigolf.com.
It's happening again. Those missed tackles are starting to stack up. Your friends pleading with players who can't hear them, sweating it out week after week. But not you. Why? Because whether they score or not, there's always another way to win on the betPARX app. New casino users score up to $1,000 bonus back in their first 24 hours.
At Lehocky, we're neither a pawn nor a hockey team. In fact, I don't even know how to skate.
Cut.
We're the injury law firm that you want fighting for you.
With our vast network of attorneys across the country, we know the playbook on injury law.
It's how Lehocky recovered billions of dollars for more than 100,000 injured and disabled workers.
And we know we can do the same for you.
So give Lehocky a call. No other law firm will fight harder for you.
And you'll never pay a dime until we win.
It's the most wonderful time with the kids jingle. Be of good cheer. It's the most wonderful.
Whether your phone's broken or old, we've got you. With Verizon, anyone can trade in any phone, any condition. And get iPhone 16 Pro with Apple Intelligence on us. And iPad and Apple Watch Series 10, all three on us. That's up to $2,000 in value, only on Verizon.
Hello?
This upcoming segment is brought to you by Stay at Home Home Care. Welcome back to the betPARX postgame show presented by Parx Casino and presented by our friends at Lehocky. So at that break, we were able to listen into some of the conversation being had in the Eagles locker room. And as it would turn out, A.J. Brown does not appear too happy with how things are working out with this Eagles passing game. Bluntly, when asked the question, what needs to happen here for the offense to get going, what can the offense work on, he simply said, passing. He was said to have seen slamming his helmet at one point after a 3-and-out on the Eagles sideline. He was asked, why did you slam your helmet after the 3-and-out? What was so frustrating? He said, quote, the 3-and-out. Last year, if you remember, A.J. Brown did not talk to the media for 2.5 weeks. I hope that's not going to happen again, but he said at the time, I had nothing nice to say, so I wasn't going to say anything at all. At least now he's got maybe few words to say, but they carry a lot of weight. Seth, you heard it. We just broke it down for you as well. Ray, when you hear something like that from A.J. Brown, what's the first thing to go through your mind?
Well, as I said earlier in the show, there were a couple sideline shots that were pretty revealing. You had A.J. was clearly unhappy, talking to Devontae Smith. He went the whole first half of this game without being targeted, if I believe. Made a couple plays that helped the team win. But we've been through this with him before, where if he's not getting the football, he's not all that happy. You know, I'm not trying to characterize him as a TO type of personality. I think he is more about the team and he's more about winning, but he wants to feel more a part of what you're doing. And I think today, clearly, he was frustrated. I mean, he knew that he was wide open on the Smith touchdown pass, didn't get the football, was well into the second half before he ever saw the football at all today. Is he upset? Yeah, I can understand he's upset. But the fact of the matter is, listen, you can't afford to have him in a bad place right now because you're into the home stretch now. I mean, every game matters, and the game next week is a huge game for this team, setting themselves up for the postseason. You can't afford – you can't Saquon is right now your number one playmaker, and that's the reason you're on this winning streak is largely because of what Saquon Barkley's been doing. You can't get away from that for the sake of classifying another player on the team. But he has to understand his role within that, and he has to just get caught up in the idea that, hey, listen, it's not about my catches, it's not about my opportunities. I just got to do when the plays come to when I have the opportunity to make a play, I go make a play. But the big thing is that the team has to win. And is he I'm not surprised that he's upset, but he can't let that carry over and take anything away from his performance, because for this team to go where they want to go, they're going to need him. He's too good of a player to just sort of drift off.
No, I certainly agree. And just for context, at the end of that first half, there's about 2:55 remaining in the game. Remaining in the first half. At that point in the first half, 2:55 remaining, he had not been targeted yet, A.J. Brown. So then they get the shot of A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith talking on the sideline. It looked somewhat animated. It looked like they were frustrated. Devontae Smith at that point had already been targeted 3 times, A.J. Brown 0 times. Then the Chauncey Gardner-Johnson interception happens. The Eagles get the ball back just before the end of the first half. You get the first target to A.J. Brown at the end of the first half. He actually gets a first down on an 11-yard gain. That's capped off by the Devontae Smith touchdown. So going off the field, though, before the interception, that's when he slammed his helmet, I assume, if that's the 3 and out that he was referencing to the media after the game. What do you make of A.J. Brown, Seth, voicing his frustrations, or at least making it known that he's frustrated?
This type of thing could not have come at a worse time.
Sure.
Because, on top of the critique of Jalen this week, now we're going to have to deal with the unhappiness of A.J. Brown this week. Listen, I get it. And, Ray, I don't think it's a selfish thing with, these number one wide receivers. The good thing is they won the football game. I'm sure he feels good about that. But he's also frustrated when you see the team struggle the way it struggled today. This has been going on all year. A.J. hasn't been getting the 10 to 15 targets per game like he has in the previous years. So he's become accustomed to that. Now with Saquon being the focal point, his numbers, he's down to about 6 or 7 targets per game. Like last week's game, I think he had 6 catches for 66 yards in the first half, and Jalen only threw 2 balls in the second half. So he didn't. No, I got that wrong. He had 6 catches for 108 yards, in the first half, and then completely disappeared in the second half. So I can understand, his frustration. You don't see that frustration when the team is winning. That's the issue. But if the team is losing, on the verge of losing, or playing as ineptly as they played today, I can understand his level of frustration, because to your point, Ray, there were times when Jalen dropped back and he had A.J. open, and for whatever reason, whether his vision was blocked, or, he misperceived where the DB was, whether he didn't throw the ball on time and on rhythm, I don't know. But I do know that, both of these wide receivers are going to continue to be, frustrated if they continue to play games in this manner where they just eke by. The previous couple of weeks, they hit another gear in the second half and they ran away with the game. But with the game hanging in the balance and a drop pass that could have been the difference, that was the difference today between winning and losing the game, now I can understand the frustration, because every wide receiver of A.J. Brown's level believes that I'm a number one wide receiver. I can help us win games. If you're not throwing me the football, or I'm not getting the ball, how can I help you win games if you don't give me opportunities? He talked last week about, hey, this is our new identity.
Right.
As long as we're winning, I'm fine with that. I just have to make the best of my opportunities when it comes my way. But if you think that you're not going to give him opportunities and he's going to be happy with that, that's a whole different thing. Right. He's okay with making the plays and taking advantage of the opportunities when they come his way. The problem was he didn't get enough opportunities today, and he's going to be frustrated as hell about that.
I guess there's the question is, where is the tipping point here? I think we're all in agreement that running the ball with Saquon and behind this offensive line is really what is powering this winning streak. I mean, that's the strength of this offense right now. You have a receiver in A.J. Brown who is one of the elite receivers in the league, no question about that. It wasn't that long ago that he set an NFL record. He was the first receiver in history to have 6 consecutive games with 125 yards or more. I mean, that's how good he can be if he's the focal point of the offense. Right now, he's not the focal point of the offense. So now how, if you're the coaches, do you balance that? Now, you're winning. You have a formula with which you're winning. Everyone seems to be kind of on board with it except him. So if you're the coach, what do you do? I mean, it's not like he's frustrated because they lost. They won today. So if you're Nick, would you feel the need to call him in and say, listen, what are you thinking? What's on your mind? I don't want you to be unhappy, but I want to know what you're thinking because I don't want you to have issues moving forward. We have a chance to win this thing this year. We have a chance to win the whole freaking thing this year. But we need to have everybody on board if we're going to do it. I need to know what you're thinking right now. You know what the offense is. You know how we're calling plays. You know how we're winning games right now. You're still going to be a part of this, but I need to know that you're 100% in on this if we're going to go forward with this. Is this a conversation the coach has to have?
Yeah, well, I think that the offensive coordinator, the wide receivers coach, the head coach, they all need to be having these conversations. Because when you make the type of transition that the Eagles have made, when you just re-up this guy and you just re-up Devontae, then the expectation is, okay, you're paying me more money, I need to produce, because you know how it is, Ray. I mean, once the production starts to fall off, the next thing that comes, hey, we need you to take a pay cut, And his issue is, I don't believe that this is going to be a big deal, and this is the reason why. A.J. Brown comes across to me as a guy that just wants to win, and he wants to be a part of the reason why you win. Because the game was so tight today, and the passing game was so ineffective today, he takes that personally. Because I'm supposed to be the guy that drives that. I'm supposed to be the guy that makes the passing game go. When Jalen drops back, I'm the first guy he should be looking for. I should be the primary on the majority of the pass plays in the game. And I think that he was just clearly frustrated that a lot of times he wasn't. There was balls that went to Grant Calcaterra. There was balls that went to Devontae Smith. Dotson got balls early in the game. And I'm pretty sure AJ is like thinking to himself, hey, I'm wide receiver 1 here. What are you doing looking over there at wide receiver 3? He should be the last option. But, you just understand when you have a highly competitive guy that's highly productive like he is, that potentially there's going to be games like this. And I don't know that it's something that needs to be talked about and beat up the way we're going to beat it up this week, as far as the way that it's going to be talked about and addressed inside the building. You understand what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. I think that they'll be fine. We're always looking for something. The TV stations, they're looking for something to point a finger at. You got AJ and you got Smitty sitting over there powwowing on the sideline, and then you get the questions with AJ. Of course he's not going to be happy. He's happy that they got the win. He's not happy with his production. And the media knows how to ask the right questions to solicit the right type of responses so that, you all of a sudden now you got a major story.
The thing that makes this different, though, is last year we went down this road with him before, okay? He went through the point where he wasn't talking to the press, walking off the field clearly angry. Body language was exactly what it was. But the team was losing. That was down the stretch last year when they were losing 5 out of 6, and they were falling apart. Not the case this year. Right now, you're one of the hottest teams in football. Right now, you have a chance to go to the Super Bowl and win it. And last year's unhappiness was, I could kind of understand it because it was a general unhappiness of this thing is getting away from us. Mm-hmm. This whole season is collapsing around us. And I think everybody was frustrated, and he demonstrated it the same as everybody else did. This year, if he's back to the same place where he's unhappy and he's not talking, but the team's winning, it's a different issue. It's a different issue, and I think it has to be perceived somewhat differently. Prepare yourself. I mean, that's going to be the conversation all week among the fans, is do we have a problem on our hands? Well, I think not, but it's not going to stop people from talking about it.
I don't think so either, Ray. And you just made a great point. You really do. It's a different situation and a different scenario. When you're losing and he's not getting the ball, then I can understand, because he feels like they're losing because they're not giving him an opportunity to help. But if they're winning and he's got an attitude, that's going to be problematic.
I'm not just saying this to be a contrarian. This is a huge problem. And the reason it's a huge problem is because this team has been on the same page all year long. And one of my biggest, other than Saquon Barkley playing out of his mind and historically great and all that, and how well the offensive line has played, the cohesion on this team after the fall apart last year and losing leadership like Fletcher Cox and losing leadership like Jason Kelsey, this team has been fantastic for the vast majority. Now 11-2 on the year. This happening after a win is horrifying for one reason. They have all been on the same page this entire year, and even through the lack of numbers for a guy like A.J. Brown and targets and receptions and targets being down drastically from last year. He was literally standing at his locker on Thursday being asked the question, hey, your targets are really down from last year. How do you feel about that? He put this big smile on his face. He said, hey, we're winning. You guys tried to get me last week on a question like this. Nice try by you. And now all of a sudden, after a win?
Gotcha.
Gotcha. You got me, media.
Hey, listen.
But you
what,
saw
man?
the frustration. It didn't take much. And he, even before he was asked a question by the media, he slammed his helmet on the ground. He was caught on camera, obviously having an animated conversation with Devontae Smith after not being targeted. Finally, and I'm not saying I was rooting for it by any means, but finally he showed that he was frustrated when he wasn't used to his full potential in a game.
Hey, listen, it's a good point. I just feel like it's not going to be that big of a deal because I think there's enough leaders in the locker room and cool heads will prevail. You know, Nick Sirianni will have a conversation. Listen, man, you're still our number one wide receiver. You know, we'll figure this thing out where we get you your targets, you know, but you know as well as I know because you've already stated it. You know, he stated it. Hey, we're a different animal this year. Every year is different, you know. So he gets it and he understands. I think it's just the frustration of the moment of having to exhale at the end of the game when Darius Slay knocks that ball away rather than being able to just sit on the sideline with this surety about yourself, knowing that the game is won.
Mm-hmm. Here's the other thing.
The game was a slog from an offensive standpoint. It was, and I don't think anybody was particularly happy with the way it played out. I mean, did everybody think there was going to be a much easier game than this? Of course. Everything told you that it should have been that way, but it wasn't. So the frustration was across the board here, I believe. But, I mean, I guess there's a time and a place, you know, and a day when you've won your 9th in a row, you've tied the club record for the longest winning streak in the history of the franchise. Saquon Barkley has just broken the all-time rushing record for the franchise today. You've won the game. You kind of have to, if you're the player, you kind of have to put all that other stuff aside. It's easy for me to say, I suppose, but you kind of have to put all that other stuff aside. And I understand, like the last 8 games, I think he's only had 2 games where he's had over 100 yards. I think he might only have 2 touchdowns. I mean, those aren't the kind of numbers that give a receiver great satisfaction. But it bothers me that he's thinking along these lines. I mean, there were times in this game where I could understand his frustration because the offense wasn't really executing. They had some 3-and-outs. The passing game wasn't clicking. The timing was clearly off. And I can see where anybody that's part of that passing game, him especially, would be frustrated with what was happening on the field. But you got out of it with the win, and you're trying to be happy with that. People are going to be asking him. He's going to get asked questions a lot this week. Everybody's going to be wanting to talk to him. I don't know if he's even going to address it or not. Last year, he kind of said, no, I'm not talking. I don't know if that's the best way to go or not. Do I think it's a long-term problem down the road? Do I think it's anything that's going to get in the way of this team going to the playoffs and doing big things? No, because at a certain point, they're going to need him. I mean, he's that good of a player. And the greater challenges lie down the road. You're going to need him to win those games. But right now, it bothers me a little bit that he's having these thoughts and he's expressing them the way that he is when there's so many other things to feel good about.
After speaking glowingly of, you guys literally saying, get your cape out. Last week he's saying, Saquon, put your cape on and, break one for a big gain and win this game for us. Are you going to do it yet? Are you going to do it yet? And he's been so encouraging of how well the Eagles have been running the football. Same thing with Devontae Smith, referring to Saquon Barkley flat out as Superman. And that's one of the things I've loved about this team is that they didn't care about their own numbers. What this says to me is now they're starting to care, at least A.J. Brown is starting to care about his own number. And the other part that goes along with it is, as you guys have been saying, you won the game. Why now? Of other times you could have pointed out, get the passing game going again. Why after a win? And especially a guy that at least had enough self-awareness last year to say to himself, you know what, I don't have anything good to say, so I'm not going to say it because I'm going to compound the problem. He ended up compounding it anyway because people ended up speaking for him in the media. But this is surprising to me that he didn't just put a button on it and say, hey, you know what? I'm going to keep this in-house. There's some frustration, sure, but, we won the game. We've won 9 in a row. Saquon broke a record. Whatever we have going on that's not working, we'll fix. But instead, he got specific. And he got specific in the most volatile thing right now in the fan base, which is if you're the Hurts hater or realist, whatever you want to call yourself, you feel like you have A.J. Brown now on your side. And that's what's going to fuel. It's not just going to be conversations started by hosts or writers or the case. It's going to be started by A.J. Brown, essentially calling out the passing game.
Well, and understand this. He's the one that can put it to rest. He can put it to rest. I mean, the next time, I don't know when the next time the media is going to have access to him, whether it's Monday, Tuesday. Well, it won't be Tuesday, Wednesday, whenever that next time is. Have him just take a breath and say, hey, guys, I was frustrated Sunday. I felt like I could have done more. I felt like I contributed more. But listen, I got no issues. We're 10-2. We're in first place. We're on our way to the playoffs. We're playing great football. I'm all in. I'm all in, just like everybody else here is all in. And just put it to rest. He can do that just with one little conversation by his locker. I hope he does. Because they don't need it this week.
Absolutely.
They don't need it this week because the team they got coming in next Sunday is going to be a lot better than the team you just struggled with today.
I would hate to end on the A.J. Brown note, so I just want to say, do you have anything else you want to add to that, Seth, when it comes to A.J. Brown and what he just say post-game?
No. Listen,
Sweet.
I know that you guys think it could be a potential problem, but I think the leadership on that team is too great for it to be a continuing problem.
All right. Now, Saquon Barkley, to end on a positive note, Saquon Barkley is pretty incredible at running the football for this team. Sets the record today. He alluded to it again, Ray. But overall, one of the things you said during the game was he's never looking tired. And there has been this huge concern about, limiting reps for Saquon Barkley, limiting touches, limiting carries for Saquon Barkley. Ray, he has shown no signs. Another 120-plus performance today, shown no signs of slowing down, breaks the record for the franchise.
Unbelievable. I mean, we had these conversations a few weeks ago when I joined you for the last time I was on the show with you. One of the things we talked about was, we have to start monitoring his touches. Do we have to start worrying about the workload? Because we said at that point, I think I was doing a little math here. I said, he's on a pace to have 380 touches this year. Can anybody do that and survive a season? Well, if anybody can, I think it's this guy. And one of the things that's amazed me, in addition to all the great things he's done on the field, is after the game, he doesn't even look tired. I mean, like I said to you, he looks like when they interview him post-game, coming off the field in his full uniform, he looks like a guy that's walking out of his Starbucks with a latte. I never saw anybody that could carry the workload that he does this deep into the season and seem so physically unaffected by it. Now, I had always heard all the stories at State College and up at the New York Giants about how his level of conditioning is far beyond the typical pro football player. And boy, has it been borne out. I mean, everything that he's done, and he looks right now, here we are well into December, and he looks fine. I mean, I'm not worried about him making it through the season. I mean, conditioning-wise, I mean, he's good to go. And he's still, when you look at the opponents, Pittsburgh's really tough, but beyond that, the other opponents, he has a real shot at Dickerson's record. That is absolutely in play here if he chooses to go for it. I don't know if he will, but he absolutely could do it.
I'll say this. I mean, he said earlier that he's in the best shape that he's ever been. And we've talked about this before. I get the sense that, when they signed him, they kind of gave him an indication of what the year would be like in some regards from the coach's standpoint. And everybody talked about his injury history. Everybody talked about, we need to monitor how much we play him. I just feel like he is one of those unique guys that trains beyond the level necessary to be in shape to play. And you couple that with him finally being able to get out of New York and breathe and get behind a good offensive line where everybody could see the real talent level of Saquon Barkley. And I just feel like, they can't work him enough, And let's be honest, too. I mean, he's asked to do a lot. He had 20 carries today, but he's not playing every down. Like when he needs a blow, he'll go to the sideline and
Kenny Gainwell
will come in and give him a breather. So it's not like in my day, like when you were gassed on the field in my day, you just had to suck it up. You just had to suck it up and hope you get a stop. It's a little bit different today. When these guys get gassed, they throw their hand up or pat the top of their helmet, and they go out until they kind of get their air back. So I think the dynamics are just a little bit different for him in this day and age than it was, when we played. And I think whatever workload they put on him, I think he's more than capable, more than able, to shoulder it and get the job done. Now, next week's going to be a much more physical game. It'll be interesting to see what kind of workload they actually put on his shoulders next week, because it's a big one. This one, to me, ranks right up there with the Baltimore game. Physical team,
Absolutely.
likes to do all the same things that you like to do. It's going to be a dogfight to the end. There are going to be ebbs and flows in this game next week. So it'll be interesting the decision that they make, how much they're actually going to work them. Because there have been games this year, Ray, where the balance of the win or the loss was hanging in the balance, and they just kept feeding them. They got close to 30 touches in a game, and they didn't. It seemed like to me, Kellen Moore and Nick Sirianni didn't think twice about it. Could potentially this next week's game be one of those games where they're like, hey, we may give you 2 days off this week, to recover, because we may need you, and we may need you in a massive way where, we're going to ask you to carry it 25 times, and we may throw another five balls to you, out of the backfield, that type of game.
Right.
Let's hope so.
Yep. In terms of his conditioning, the only other player at the same position that I've seen that had a similar level of aerobic conditioning was Walter Payton. Walter Payton carried a similar kind of load, but had the same kind of thing. After a game, he looked fine. But his off-season conditioning was legendary. I mean, running the hills back in Mississippi and all that. I mean, everybody knew how hard he worked. I don't know exactly what Saquon's off-season conditioning program is, but it's got to be something really similar, because next to Peyton, I've never seen a guy that is in condition to carry the load the way this guy is.
Before we get out of here, we have to tell you about something we were talking about in the pregame show. If you haven't seen Ray Didinger's play, Tommy and Me, about him and Tommy McDonald, their relationship, you got to go see it. It's going to be out there January 7th to the 26th. The People's Light presents Tommy and Me, written by Ray Didinger. Ray, it's a fantastic play. Both Seth and I have seen it a number of times. You did a wonderful job with this, and your cast is incredible.
Thank you very much. And for folks at People's Light Theater is out in Malvern. It's a great theater. First time we've ever been there, but we're really looking forward to it, and I hope you can all come out and see it.
Yeah, me too. Now, Ray, there's one more order of business, though, that we have to do. You're in for our friend Derrick Gunn.
Correct.
The Eagles, I don't know if you have this in your stats and your notes and all that stuff. The Eagles are 9-0 since Derrick Gunn regrew his mustache. So we have to slap a mustache on you, my friend. So if you just try to line up with that, there it is. Yeah, look at that. Yeah.
Other way.
Other way. It's difficult. There we go. This is called, this is what the kids talk about with artificial intelligence. This is peak AI, all right? So now 9-0.
We need a screenshot that.
I like it. I always wanted to be Snidely Whiplash for Halloween.
That's exactly the same reference that Gunner makes. That is awesome. Thank you, Ray, for playing along, and thank you so much for joining us again. We do want to plug one more time. We got giveaways that are still coming up on the show.
Yep.
Make sure you're following everything Seth Joyner.
Yeah, we've got the Jalen Hurts jersey. Make sure you're following on social media. There'll be a video up this week to tell you what you got to do to get in to win it, and we will announce the winner of that jersey after during next week's post-game show.
There we go. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening, everyone. We appreciate everyone joining us on 6abc.com, as well as Seth Joyner Show on YouTube. Like and subscribe. Ray Didinger, thank you so much. The Hall of Famer. Eagles Hall of Famer, Seth
Great to
Joyner.
have you, my friend.
Great to have you, man.
Great to have Ray Didinger with us. We'll be back with you guys for Eagles-Steelers next week. Thanks for joining.
Fly, birds. Fly now.